Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to every single person who listened to the very first episode of the Tech Catalyst Show, which mainly is where I shared the beginning of how my story began and how I became excited about tech, mainly wanting to become a penetration tester, which eventually led to my interest in writing code. Although from the last episode I covered the whole story on how I got to know about Andela, so in case if you haven't heard about that whole story, you can easily just go back to the first episode, which is about 20 minutes, and then you can come back to this episode so you kind of get how the storyline goes. In this episode, I'll be taking you on a journey to Andela and how it all turned out, and I do hope you all enjoy today's story. So, my journey to Andela. Well, allow me to go back a little bit. So, let me back up in time because this will really help everyone understand the story better. So, back in 2016, when I took tutorial classes, I made quite a number of friends. A couple being Gaffa, Gabriel, McDonald, and a couple others. I primarily mentioned these three because consciously for me, well, I would also say unconsciously for them, they helped nurse my interest in tech. Now, Gaffa wasn't exactly a tech guy. Mainly, we had the same HP laptop models, which he advised me to get at that time. And he also enjoyed playing video games. I think one of the games we really played then, although it was a pretty old game, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I think I got the software from him and then I played the game. But mainly we were into video gaming, so we most times had a tech topic to discuss. I call it tech because it always involved cracking what software, how to crack what particular software, where to get a particular software, stuff that simply made gaming fun for us. McDonald, on the other hand, I'd say was a beginner level pen tester. Anyways, I'm sorry if you don't understand what term penetration testing is. It mainly, in my own understanding, is a fancy word for hacking, but it deals mainly with testing the security level of a machine and then trying to get access to that machine, which makes it hacking in a sort of way. Only that the term hacking is also used to describe software engineers as well, or not just hacking. Software engineers are also called hackers, but I don't intend on getting into any industry turf on what term is used and whatnot. So I guess I'll leave a link in the description that properly describes what penetration testing is, who hackers are, and also who software engineers are. And I guess I'll just leave a bonus on what ethical hacking is. But if you let me go back to who McDonald is to me at that time, he was this dude that mostly spoke about things he did. Mainly, he say things like he created such and such a virus, he flooded a web server with requests. Sorry if you don't understand what that means. What it simply means is, or what the result rather is, when you flood a server with request is you bring too many orders to the server and then it crashes, and whatever website is hosted on that server becomes less functional or simply just crashes with the whole server as well. So McDonald was this guy that made me see the world of tech actually possible. Now, either the things he did were for a fact or not, I can't really say. But I was able to look beyond Hollywood, which to me I think was just mainly white guys. Although yes, I've seen some black African Americans in Hollywood movies who were hackers of some sort, but I never really picture it on a level at which we over here in Africa could certainly do. So listening to McDonald say most of this stuff and having him snoop around and show me some really funny techie stuff, which at this point in time I don't really think they were actual things. But anyways, based on all of that experience, I was able to believe that even Africans are also capable of impressive things in the tech industry, and that was a very strong encouragement for me. Gabriel, who we'll get to in a bit, is a software engineer, and at the time, he was just learning how to write code, and I was about to begin, which was much later. It was Gabriel who introduced me to the website called Solo Learn. that made it really easy for me to get started because in the last episode I spoke about free code camp, which when I got there made the whole thing look very scary and I bounced out. But solo learn made it on a different level. So with solo learn I was able to learn a couple of things and it was fun to learn. The way it's presented on solo learn, it's very easy to grasp, although that doesn't really make the entire process very simple. Back to the present time in my story, which is in the year 2017. 2017, around the month of December. So this was just when I had just quit my position as a basic school teacher, and then I applied to Andela's fellowship, which is where like all the drama begins. So the way the Andela fellowship admission process works is in four stages. The first is the application where you personally get to apply, and then the next one is the home study. Then right after that you go through the interview stage. Then the fourth stage is called the boot camp, which lasts for 2 weeks. That's if you were able to make it into the second week. And a successful completion of all four steps should then make you a fellow at Andela. But that's after you have received your call up mail that you have successfully become a member of the Andela's Fellowship. So in December, after I had applied to the fellowship and I had taken my personality test, which is like a test you do that helps them gauge your personality, although that comes before the home study. I was right at the home study stage where we had to cover a curriculum and then take our proctor tests. So we had to read through this curriculum that was put into modules. So they had different sections that made it like easy for anyone to pretty much understand. And reading the curriculum wasn't really an issue for me because I naturally am excited about learning new concepts, majorly in tech. But my first challenge definitely did come at the home study stage, which is the pro talk test. Because in the pro talk test, that's the test in which we then had to write to show our level of understanding on the concept we had studied. Every model generally has a theory and a practical section. This the reason it's that way is because I believe it's just like how exams and tests are made, mainly just to test our understanding on, like I said, the concepts we claimed to have learned. And for me, the theory was quite easy, but the code labs, horror. I can even still imagine the expression on my face when I first saw the test. To say I was lost is definitely an understatement. And interesting enough, I didn't even at the time know that Google actually is like the real main tool that most people use. Now, okay, let me let you in on a little secret. A lot of people who do know how to write code, and now this includes me and many other of my friends that I do know, aside from understanding the concept of the code they write and also having a good understanding on what this does or why this behaves this way, although not in all cases but in a good amount of cases, yes, we do have an understanding of what does what. Aside that, most of us are, I can almost say everyone who is a software engineer or programmer at best is also an excellent Google searcher. So trust me, Google is like the ultimate tool of knowledge that every single developer should know how to use. So in case if you want to be a developer, you definitely should know how to Google stuff, because most times you will certainly feel lost at certain concepts. So you definitely should know how to use Google, which shouldn't be that hard. Although it's not, it's not really hard to use Google to find answers. It's just like how you find regular answers to regular things. Only this time you would have to be a little more specific to get a little more specific results. So after about 3 days of me trying to figure out how to solve the code labs myself, and definitely with no success at all, I then decided to do like a routine check that I do once in a while with my friends. So I think I remember, yeah, definitely I called Gabriel. The reason I did this was, yeah, like I said, I was just like having this routine check where I just like called up on friends that I still had their contacts, mainly because I had misplaced two of my devices. So along with the contacts and all the info that was on it, with the ones I was still able to get my hands on, I do call them once in a while. So I remember calling Gabriel and then we chatted over the phone and I mentioned I was learning how to write code And I also remember I did mention I had applied for the fellowship at Andela, and I was also going through issues with my code lab. So with the way it all turned out, I even remember both of us are chatting over it, and I was like, perhaps I was making a wrong choice because the way I looked at the whole code lab, it really looked impossible for me to be able to figure out the answers. And the reason I say this is because in computer science, you could describe computer science as the study of problems, the solutions of problems, and also problems without solutions. Although out of sensibility, they wouldn't give me a quiz that had no solution, but I still wasn't entirely sure which category these code labs fell into. And if you asked me at the time, they definitely were problems with no solutions because I just couldn't figure it out. I mean, how exactly was I even expected to even write a program that takes a word, looks at the amount of vowels in it, and then simultaneously outputs the numbers of consonants it found? I mean, to even be honest with you, I'm not even that good at maths. I was just 3 weeks into learning, about 2 3 weeks into just learning how to write proper code in HTML, which mainly is not even a programming language. But at the time, I felt I was really getting into it. And to also be straight, you need to have a good understanding of what maths is. So forget I said I'm not entirely good at maths. Perhaps you might not need to be like the baddest math guy or math girl out there, but definitely you need to have a good understanding of math logic because that will help you write better algorithms. But enough of me deviating away from the story. Back to the story, which is me chatting with Gabriel. Anyways, as I chatted with Gabriel, the news about Andela was pretty new to him, and I think I did a really good job at hyping it. I wouldn't exactly call all I said as hype because they were all true, and I was simply speaking out of deep enthusiasm. So Gabriel asked me to send him a link, which I did, and he also applied. He took his personality test and got to the home study stage, which I currently was in. So, if you are wondering how the timeline worked, well, by the time I checked up on Gabriel and during the time we spoke about the whole opportunity at Andela, it was, I think, about a day to the application deadline and about 2 weeks to the home study deadline. So, when he registered, it didn't take long for him to receive all the important materials and links, so it was pretty easy for him to just like go through in about 2 to 3 days and caught up with me on the home study. So for me and Gabriel, this experience was really challenging and definitely very rewarding. Gabriel, who at the time was more familiar with coding scripts than I was because he was even working on a couple of side projects at the time. Unlike me, like I said, I just started scripting HTML in about 2 weeks. But all the same, with Gabriel's help and certainly with the help of Google that ultimately led us to Stack Overflow, we were able to complete our code labs and then the theory, which I was feeling pretty confident about at the time. And we were pretty pumped about it when we did complete the whole home study and we did beat the deadline. But then after the home study deadline and it was time for interview call up where everyone like got a mail either inviting them to the interview or simply just rejection mails. We got our first rejection mails. Now I say it's our first because definitely it was not our only rejection mail. We got many more after that. But that did not still like break our resolve, and the whole process of we getting rejected at certain points in time also made us look at the process of failing at a different plane than we were used to generally. After our first rejection, we were down for I think a day or two, but that didn't really break our resolve. So we applied together for the second time. This time, my buddy Gabriel didn't get an interview mail, but I did. Although I didn't get through with that particular application, but the whole experience still was exciting because I did get to run into a few persons I did chat with on the Open-Andela Slack channel and had resolved some code challenges with. Although I'm not sure if the Open-Andela Slack channel is still active, but maybe if it is, I should leave a link in the description below so you can all join. I don't know if that's against the rules, but I think you basically can just invite someone. So I could drop an invite link. I also remember the first two individuals who handled my first interview at Andela, and that'll be Adebi and Pijak. Now I know this is more like their nicknames, although Pijak doesn't like to be called Pijak, well, his Instagram handle says Pijak. Mainly his name is Jacob, and then Adebi is mainly Mr. Adebayo. And I also remember the first question they asked me. So I think they were having this argument between PES or FIFA. I don't really know who liked what, but as I got to the table, my first question was, which do you prefer, FIFA or PES? And my answer at the time was PES, which is Pro Evolution Soccer. But right now in 2019, I'm FIFA all the way. But I won't be going into the details about that. But perhaps maybe on a later project, I just might get into gaming once again for all of you, but not now. And for me, on my very first interview, the atmosphere was inviting, and although I wasn't entirely confident about myself, although I did prepare for the whole interview and I like watched YouTube videos and whatnot, I still was lacking in the display of authority in my character. So I was more like, I wouldn't say shy, but wasn't bold either. So when questions came to me, like when they ask me some questions, and I could like stutter a bit. Sometimes some I did like have a fine tune to what the answers were, but like just the whole setting did put me off guard, and I was making a lot of blunders in so many places. And when I noticed from how I stammered at questions, it then put me off. So I also remember them asking me at the tail of the interview. No, mainly that. I remember me asking them at the tail end of the interview if they had any advice for me. So mainly after they were done asking me questions, I then wanted to ask them questions. But then part of the questions I did like ask a couple of questions, like just like general stuff I think that I did at the time know the answer to, just wanted to get clarity on. And based on how I felt I did handle the interview, I then phrased the question, which was more like, a year from now, what are the qualities that perhaps a fellow, which is what they are called because it's a fellowship, so it's more like, what are the qualities that a fellow would display that makes them stand out? And I remember Adebi staring at me with this blank expression, which made it really difficult to tell if he was impressed or perhaps he has had that question like 1,000 times already. Why Pie Jack, on the other hand, had a more funny reaction on his face. And I remember myself even thinking of Pie Jack and Adebi in this abstraction way of Pinky and the Brain. Although mainly it's a compliment because they are two smart individuals and definitely two awesome tech engineers. But when I did ask my questions, I remember them making a point on confidence, which is why I then bring that up, because as they pointed out to my confidence, and they also made a note on team spirit, which I deduced was mainly them trying to give me feedback on how I how they perceived I had performed in the interview. And this wasn't just a generic answer, and that puts a good point on the whole community at Andela, which is that people are seen mainly as individuals and not employees, because when they offered their answers to me, they were not just speaking out of, like I said, like a generic answer or something. They just like, based on them receiving these questions a couple of times, then just like give a cliche response. It was something that was peculiar to me. So definitely, I then deduced that this definitely is what is happening in the whole community at Andela. And just right after my interview, I then hung around with a couple of guys that I ran into, and we kind of exchanged contacts, and that was it for that time. So then I went back home, and after about 3 to 4 days, I then got my second rejection mail. And so I applied a third time, and I didn't also get through. So I then applied a fourth time, and this time I also did apply with Gabriel, because the third time too we didn't get our shot. So we applied the fourth time, and I think this time we both made it to the interview. But I made it past to the boot camp. And when Gabriel mentioned to me about his rejection mail, that really did hit me, because at the time, Gabriel was the better developer and I was just someone who had gotten quite good at using Google. And Gabriel has always been this encouraging friend, which has been a strong point in our relationship as friends. And his support then, when I then got my mail to go ahead to the boot camp and he didn't, then he still like gave me some words of advice and encouragement. And that really did help strengthen my confidence for the boot camp. The boot camp is where a lot of the action goes down. So I will be sharing all of that experience with everyone during the next episode, with every single detail on what went down. And now, to me, that makes it sound like it's a super exciting experience, which by every bit, it definitely was one. So be sure to tune in for the next episode to hear what happened during my whole bootcamp experience, and also other events that did add a little more twist to the whole tale on my whole journey to then becoming a world-class software developer. So until then, stay safe everyone, stay off drugs, and learn something new today. My name is Williams Falodun and we are on the Tech Catalyst Show. See you on the very next episode.